There you go.
Can you click that? Yeah. Do you need anything else for this one?
No, I think that's good. Thank you so much. All right. Very good. Welcome, everyone.
Okay, so we are in groups again for today. So we want to go until 11:25 in these groups, and we can maybe do orange on that side, and then grape on this side, and then cherry on this side.
How about 11:20?
Okay, 11:20.
So then each group would have 10 minutes. Okay?
Professor Morel, which group do you want me to be in?
You're not in any of those groups?
No.
How did that happen? That is ridiculous.
She can join our group because we don't have Lucy.
Oh, I'm in orange. Yay.
Okay. All right. I'm so sorry, Julie. Julie, why don't you assign an organizer for each one of the groups?
An organizer?
Yeah.
Group? How about for orange, it can be Sheridan. For grapes, it can be Jennifer. And then for cherry, I'll be it.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Great. John, do you guys want to come over here?
Yeah,
Because we're over here.
no.
Does Orange want to go first?
Should we do your topic up?
Why don't you redistribute yourselves so that we can all see each other, right? Jennifer's.
My little hobble.
Aaron, why don't you leap around onto the other side?
Yes.
Let me just say, by way of just a couple of things before our conversation gets going. If you haven't read about this document that I posted about discussions, I want you to be sure and read through it before our workshop tomorrow. Okay, we're having our workshop tomorrow that was scheduled for last week. We'll do that tomorrow. There's also a lecture this Thursday that is, if you look on the information for the course, you will see that this is an opportunity to get some extra credit. It's a very interesting discussion about the Ottoman Empire, which was based in Turkey. Very, very important empire that lasted for almost 400 years. So that would be well worth your getting a chance to see on Thursday. Let me just one word about the Aeneid, and something that Professor Satterfield I think touched upon. But the Aeneid is an amazing work of literature, and we're reading it because of its stature, for one thing, in the sort of series of poetic accomplishments of Western societies. This is a feat. It took, as Professor Satterfield noted, 10 years to create. Virgil, that averages about 3 lines a day that Virgil devoted to writing this. It's as a work in Latin, it is a masterpiece in what he did with the Latin language to bend it to fit into the Greek meter, the dactylic hexameter, which is not a meter that is, shall we say, native to the Latin language. So this is a masterpiece of linguistic accomplishment, right? But it's also a very important document for the Romans as they understood themselves. And it's vastly different than the Homeric poems because it takes a retrospective look. Virgil is sitting in Rome at a time when the Principate, when Augustus is establishing himself as the most powerful person possibly that has ever lived on this planet. In terms of the wealth that he commanded, the resources over which he presided. There's been nothing like the Principate of ancient Rome since. So it's a retrospective work looking at how is it possible for this little supposedly band of refugees to come and to establish themselves in the Italian peninsula and ultimately turn into what Rome was at that time. So it's an amazing document for all kinds of reasons, and I hope that you're enjoying it. And these questions and the things that we're doing are meant to get you to think about it in some different ways. There's much we could spend an entire semester on the Aeneid and do it very profitably. So with that in mind, let's talk about it, all right? And we'll talk more about discussions and the thinking and the reasoning behind what we're doing and why we're doing it this way tomorrow during our workshop. Julie, thank you.
I will leave it to the orange group. Is that you guys?
Sorry. Okay, the topic that we had is not.
If you want, I can read
It's,
it.
it's
Okay, yeah.
A poem by Catullus, who lived approximately from 80 to 54 BCE, an older contemporary of Virgil, 70 to 19 BCE, contains the following lines. Your virginity, your life as an unmarried young woman, is not entirely yours, but is partly your parents'. 1/3 belongs to your father, 1/3 belongs to your mother, and 1/3 is yours. Do not fight against the two parts who have given their rights along with the dowry to their son-in-law. How do the events in the Aeneid conform to this idea of marriage and family?
I'll say something important first.
in book 7, line 67, Ernest is introduced with his name. And it takes all the way to line 85 for Lavinia to be mentioned. So, Latinus's daughter is not as worthy as Turnus is in this part of the book.
Yeah, and it sort of diminishes her identity to something a little different rather than her own person.
In the book 7, lines 115, there is a prophecy spoken to Latin, saying that telling him not to give his daughter to Turnus, but instead preserve his daughter for a foreign leader. And again, it's like her choice doesn't matter. It's like never mind, not marry this guy, give her to another guy. It's like an object or something.
Yeah, she never even appears.
Yeah.
You never see her in a scene even.
Yeah, she's just talked about the entire time.
Yeah. And I think something worth noting is that her father and her mother have different opinions on whom she should marry. Her father wants her to marry Aeneas because of this prophecy, and her mother wants her to marry Turnus because of Alecto. And so not only is she a completely passive character whose fate seems to be decided by her parents' choices, but her parents aren't even fully in charge of their own choices. They're both swayed by some larger power.
Yeah. And for example, in book 7, lines 476, her mother, Amata, just abducts her and hides her somewhere, so Aeneas doesn't get her. And also about God swaying parents into different directions. Latin is spoken to directly about the prophecy, but his wife Amata is just tricked into hating Aeneas and fighting against her husband. So as we talked about it last class, males are talked to directly, respectfully sort of, more respectful than women, and women are just tricked into doing things as if they're not capable of direct conversation.
As we talk about marriage, and let's see, in the poem it says, who have given their right along with dowry to their son-in-law. It's cool to look at book 7, line 381, or not 381, 380, around there, 380, 385, where Juno is talking about being against the marriage of Aeneas and Lavinia. And she says, I concede Aeneas the rule of Latium, and Lavinia is his bride by iron fate, but to draw it out and delay the issues that I may do and destroy both nations. Their people's lives will be the price for father and son-in-law to form a union. Trojan and Rutulian blood will be your dowry. I like the line. Blood will be your dowry. But again, it sort of draws this marriage in a completely political and sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Let's see. We were sort of thinking about Iphigenia as well when we're sort of talking about fate and daughters being used as pawns for fate and marriage. It reminded us of that story.
Yeah. And also with the whole fate thing, like King Latinus, like even though he knew Turnus was like a better match for his daughter, he still was like it was safer to accept fate than try to like change his destiny. So he refused Turnus's hand, or hand of Lavinia to Turnus because of that.
Yeah.
So it was more for his destiny even than his daughter's happiness and well-being.
Julie, you said that Turnus was a better choice.
Or not better choice, but like it was like a better suit. He was most eligible, seemed like.
Okay.
Because I know she was pursued by many suitors, as I said, but he was like a lord of a nearby kingdom. So
So are you sort of saying that her mother received him as a better fit, or that he was, in the context of the story, a better fit, and so it was sort of
Before his mother turned against the father, it said that he was a better suit for her. He was the most eligible. And then his mother turns against the father because she's tricked into it by Alecto.
Alecto, yeah.
Yeah.
No, let's look at the text here. I mean,
Doesn't say.
Let's see, it talks about in book 7, line 450, sort of about around there, her mother is talking about not wanting Lydia to marry Aeneas.
Yeah, we're like starting
And
your hand.
this in the justification.
Yeah, what of your old love for your own, what of your hand so often pledged Turnus, your kinsman? If it had been decided that we need a son-in-law of foreign stock, if the words of your father Faunus are so important, then I maintain that every land not under our rules of foreign land and the gods agree. Turnus himself, if he traces lineage, is descended from Inachus and Macrucius with roots in Mycenae, the heart of Greece.
Mhm.
So like she,
Amata certainly thinks that Turnus is a better.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Right,
like that's.
okay.
That's what I'm saying, like Amata like said so, but then King Latinus was like listening to the oracle and listening to like more of his fate and destiny, saying that, okay, well, this should be the better fit for like everyone, whereas Amata thinks that Turnus was the better fit.
So as Casey points out, you have a split decision here.
Yeah.
Okay, so who would be this deciding vote?
The man.
Well, if you have 2/3, it should be the daughter.
Should be the daughter.
It should be the daughter, right? So it's the daughter's situation,
Actually,
or is it?
It's war.
Yeah,
Yeah, she needs
Well, it's
well, that's how.
What will
was.
clarify that decision for her?
If someone dies.
If someone dies.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. Julie.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't have anything else to comment on Orange, we can move to Grape.
I just had a question, do you guys think that poet is right when he was talking about the 1/3 for each person, or do you think the proportions are different?
personally will believe.
No, at that, in the Aeneid, do you think that him saying 1/3 is the dad, 1/3 is for the wife, and 1/3 is for the daughter, do you think that applies in the Aeneid, or do you think the proportions were different?
Well, since you have this sort of this gridlock situation where there's never they basically go to war because there's these two parts clashing and the third part has no decision. I guess
So it looks like 50-50.
it does seem more like 50-50 since she doesn't have any.
Yeah, she's such a significant character, she has no actions.
But influenced by the gods too.
Oh yeah. And just before Orange is over, I think we would be neglectful to not mention Dido at all when talking about marriage in the Aeneid. And just the only thing to sort of say about her, because her parents aren't really involved, is the fact that her marriage and her sort of love is basically controlled by the gods as well, and by Aeneas' mother to an extent. So she's also just sort of a pawn through marriage to everybody else.
And to correct my own mistake, I earlier today said that Amata turns against Latin only after she's being tricked into doing that. But actually, in the beginning of book 7, somewhere around line 65, it says that Turnus was the handsomest of all, and he was from old blood, powerful, and Latinus' queen was strangely passionate to join him to herself as her son in marriage. So I have a mistake, apologize.
Okay, great.
Okay, so our topic was when Aeneas first meets the Arcadians, they're celebrating a festival dedicated to Hercules, among other gods. Evander, the king of the Arcadians, explains the origins of this festival to Aeneas. What does the story suggest about the Arcadians, and what's the significance of the story for Aeneas? So first, we thought we were just gonna talk about some of the stories mentioned.
All this occurs on 196 in this book. Book 8 lines starts at like 210, 215. Basically, King Evander starts talking about the great Hercules. Everyone knows him, but he talks about earlier when he meets up with the ogre named Caucasus. And much earlier in the book, they talked about the founding of Rome and how the giant, is what they called it back then, dragged the cattle by their tails, and so they walked backwards so they couldn't find where they're going. And that this story goes into further detail. And I think that all of this whole story kind of adds to the Achaeans, like, not warlike nature, but kind of they worship like, manly men. We're kind of waiting a little bit.
All right, and then there's a story of Saturn before. Originally, the Italy was inhabited by. It says here, an unruly race, which had no rules or arts, or did not how to yoke an axe or lay up stores or manage them. So then Saturn came up from the highest heaven, and he kind of gave them laws and called them Latium, and this became the Golden Age. But as they progressed, it says that the people kind of changed, and then there was a passion for war and love of possessions. And so then more people came, like the Ausonians and the Sicilians. And it says that the name changed a lot. And then Evander came. He was led to this land over time and through the sea to its end. And that's the story of how their land came to be. And so do you want to talk about what it suggests?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, like as John was saying, like the story of Hercules shows how, glory is really emphasized and is really highly regarded in that society. Like obviously, like these stories mean a lot to them. They're having a whole festival about it, and they're praying to these gods. They're having a big celebration with these stories, and so again, it's like through his might, Hercules was able to, deal with the monsters and choke his stepmother's twin snakes and everything. So they highly value that. But then at the same time, with she was saying, like with the second story, how they become really, materialistic and wanted possessions a lot. What they learned from that was to live more simply. So even though they're having this like festival to like celebrate these stories, they still, as a whole, generally try to live more simply.
Okay, and then I'm going to talk about the significance for Aeneas. So we learn in Book 8, lines 1760 to 844. It's just kind of a big, huge poem, but about the future of the land and the future of Italy. So we learned that Evander's settlement is going to be like the future site of Rome. So you can see why like Aeneas would consider these stories significant, because like this is going to be the history of his land, and this is where he's going to fulfill his prophecy. So I think that plays a big part in like his future.
Does anyone want to add anything to Greg? Okay, Cherry.
All right, so our topic was in Book 9 as Turnus besieges the Trojan camp, Nisus and Euryalus undertake a raid on the Quintilian camp at night. This naturally recalls when the nightmare raid Odysseus and Diomedes made in Iliad 10. How do the raids and outcomes differ? What does Virgil's version suggest about the Romans?
Just a point of thing about the pronunciation of names. In the back of your edition is a glossary with a pronunciation guide. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
All this
It's like
information.
this.
What's that?
We'll study.
Alright, so Euryalus and Nasus. What does Virgil suggest about the Romans? So we'll just kind of start off with talking about what's the differences between the raids. And I mean, first off, definitely most glaring is that Nasus and Euryalus don't come back alive, while Odysseus and Diomedes do. They're definitely more successful in kind of what they get. It talks about in book 10 around 400. Yeah. Surely now that these were mighty gifts that your heart longed for, the horses of the valiant Hades, they are difficult horses for mortal men to manage, and even ride them. And it kind of talks, and then later on it talks about some of the other, like all the gold and all the armor that they took from the Trojan camp.
And we talked a little bit about the framing of the text, how you kind of know whose side you are on as a reader, and how in the Odyssey that's very, very strong, because even the book not being chronologically told, at the very beginning you hear about the crimes of the suitors, so you know very clearly that they're the villain at the beginning. So we kind of compared that to in the Aeneid. You very much know that you're on the side of Aeneas, and that he is trying to found this and that's his destiny, and so you side with him. But it was maybe a little less clear, like you could almost side with the other side as well, because there's so much talk about them sharing the common ancestor, the common culture and customs. We kind of talked about that a little.
With that, so also it's, I think, it's mainly reminding me of it, like they're talking about like sheep and lions is a very common connection between the two of them. So in book 10 of the Iliad, I think it's like
45 to 46.
Yeah, so like it's just and then in the Aeneid, it was
402 to 405.
yeah.
I'm sorry, we just said it was
Which ones?
but just the.
Oh.
It was in the Iliad, it's lines 485 to 486, and then in the Aeneid, it was
We spoke to 9, and it was between line 400 and line 405.
it's that italicized portion. And so I think it's just interesting that like they have the same kind of comparison, because I mean it's a great comparison because everyone kind of understands what's going on with it, and it has a lot of imagery with it. But I think it's interesting because it's two different time periods, and like the concepts behind it are slightly different.
And then Virgil continues that in 937, 943, where it creates a mental image of this kind of cornered lion, which is kind of representative of Nasus and Euryalus kind of being cornered and killed by the Rutulians after their failed raid. And then also it seems as if in the Aeneid, lines 224 to 228, as they are leaving their camp, Nasus is kind of questioning, do the gods put this fire in our hearts, Euryalus, or do our passions become our gods? So they're kind of wondering, would this be, like, are the gods kind of like leading us on to do this, or is it just coming from ourselves? Well, in the Iliad, in 295 to 298, they talk about how, so they spoke in prayer and Pallas Athena heard them. Then after they made their prayers to the daughter of great Zeus, they went on their way like two lions into the black night, through the carnage and through corpses where war gear and dark blood. And that's just kind of saying how, like they prayed to Athena and like she kind of ordained it and sanctified it. Well, not sanctified it, but like kind of backed them in their journey, in their raid.
What pages was it in Aeneid? What book?
Book 9, 224 to 228.
In comparison, like in the Odyssey, there isn't as much questioning about what do the gods want, because Athena like actually takes the form of one of his friends and communicates very directly. There's a very different tone set for divine intervention and interaction. Even though like obviously if she's taking the form of the friend, not everyone knows, so it's not like this is what's going to happen, but he still gets very much the sense that he has the support.
And also, another difference in the Aeneid, like the Rutulians, is that how you pronounce Rutulian? The Rutulians do not send like another group of spies to the other camp, while in the Iliad, lines 318 to 319 to 327, Dolon and Eumedes go across, and they are killed by Diomedes and Odysseus as they return from the Trojan camp. So that's another difference in how only one side sends the spies.
Does anyone have anything they want to add to Cherry? Does anyone have anything they want to add to any of the groups now that we just got all of them together?
I have some questions. Aaron, I'd like you to tell us your views, having looked at the poems, the Homeric poem, the Iliad, and this one, and because Julie brings up this whole point about the divine intervention, and how do you sense that the divine intervention in the Iliad is different? Is it the same? How do you view the way that the gods are involved in the Aeneid in comparison to what happens in the Iliad?
In the Iliad, it seems to be more matter-of-fact intervention, whereas in the Aeneid, they explicitly pray to the gods during the mission. For example, in 253, and I pray that Jupiter or whatever god may upon me with favor and bring back triumph. Whereas in the Iliad, we find an example. He does say, yeah, let the gods be my witness, but he does not in line 327. Actually, but which is Hector, not the Greeks, so it's the other side of the raiding party. However, it's almost a matter of fact of the gods exist, whereas here he's drawing upon them for strength and extra traits. It seems as if Virgil, or in the Iliad, it seems as if the gods are just culturally there, present naturally, whereas in Virgil, it seems as if he's trying to emphasize their existence even more.
Why do you think that's the case?
Due to the patronage of Augustus, Augustus wanted to emphasize virtue in Rome, and therefore Virgil would emphasize that in his writing.
So, did you say that you don't think that the Iliad emphasizes the gods?
I think it does, but I think it's due to the natural cultural context.
Would you mind elaborating on that?
I feel like the Greeks used the gods as almost idioms, like it's almost idiomatic speech, sort of like we would say he had a spur of strength or something, you know, they would say like Ares affected him.
But
what if it was?
yeah, and I definitely agree with that. But I mean, the gods directly interact with people in the Iliad too. They're like straight up characters. But I do agree that there's a difference between how they're portrayed in the Iliad and in the Aeneid as characters, I guess.
I think that while they act as characters in the Aeneid, or the Iliad, in the Aeneid, they aid people because of their virtues and because they called upon the gods to do so, whereas in the
To me, what it seems to me is that in the Iliad, it's just two sides of gods, and they're just playing games, like playing chess with the pawns that are humans. And but in the Aeneid, there's a fate that everyone must follow, and there are a few gods who try to go against the fate, but they lose. Actually.
Yeah, and that also happens like in the Aeneid, where they don't even know what's gonna happen with fate.
And Jupiter saying like, this is his bride through iron fate, like directly saying she doesn't have authority over
A couple
fate.
of times now, she's not only tried to go against fate, but specifically talked about how she could.
And in Iliad, Zeus in that case was swayed to both sides depending on he couldn't choose sides. Like one time he is here, one time another time he is here, depending what influence is put upon him. But in Aeneid, he's on the Trojan side. It's obvious, and his mother, Sibyl, also saves the ships, the Trojan ships, from drowning. So it says mother of gods and father of gods, which is Zeus, Jupiter. They're all on the Trojan side, the main gods. So.
Thank you, Julie.